Hi everyone, welcome again to today's Google Analytics Masterclass event. As we mentioned, I'm Stephanie and I actually work on the Google Analytics Specialist team in Mountain View, and I'm here in Singapore for a short-term visit, and I'm very excited to be able to participate in today's event and speak to you all about the wonderfulness that is Google Analytics. So the team that I work on, we essentially support our sales teams on all things related to the product. But we also work with our users both internally and externally on teaching them how to better leverage the data from this product to make data-driven decisions, which is very much in line with what we're talking about today and very related to the next section on goals. So the importance of creating goals, tracking them, and all that good stuff. So Barbara touched on this a little bit, as well as Vinny, but if you don't create goals within analytics, you find that when you create an account and you get started, you're pretty inundated by all the data and all the 80-some reports that you see in your account. It can be a little bit overwhelming. So the first thing that you should do when you get started really is ask yourself, why do you have a website? And hopefully, it's not because just everyone else is doing it, or that you had some leftover budget, but that you really put some thought into why you have an online presence. And this is really important to think about because depending on what you're benchmarking your data against, if you don't know what the objective of your online presence is, then you're not going to really go anywhere with the data that you have in your reports. So this should be fairly obvious to most of you, right, depending on the type of business that you're operating. If you're an e-commerce business, you're probably trying to drive revenue and sales. If you're a lead generation business, you want to drive leads, requests for phone calls, that type of thing. If you're a branding website or a content consumption site, you just care about driving eyeballs to your website, keeping people on your website engaged, that type of thing. So these are the type of high-level macro goals that you guys are mostly all pretty aware of. But it's also important to think about the micro goals that exist within your website. So for example, if you're an e-commerce business, you probably also care about how many people are requesting catalogs on your website, or how many people are going through your help center, looking at your FAQ, that type of thing. And these are very important objectives to measure as well in order to better understand the complete success of your business online, and also see how you can have a bigger impact on your macro goal. So what are the kinds of goals that you can track in analytics? Well, pretty much anything. So the most obvious example, if you're an e-commerce business, you can track conversions. So anytime someone completes a purchase and they make that end transaction, you can track the conversion page to signal anytime someone bought something on your website. If you're a lead generation site, you can also track the number of leads or requests for phone calls that were made to your sales team. Or if you're a different kind of site and you just care about how many people are downloading your plugins, or you want to specify a certain type of user action on your site with a little bit of customization, you can also track this as goals. Let's say you're running a blog. So you just care about creating a community within your website where people are engaged, people are posting, people are submitting comments. So you can also track this as well. So you can track the particular submit comment button. Your social bookmarking site, you probably care about people who are tagging your links on your website, bookmarking articles, that type of thing. Or let's say you're a news site and you're really trying to engage the local audience and you want to see how many people are subscribing to your newsletter. You can also track this as well. And something I'll talk a little bit later about is the importance of attributing a goal value to your non-e-commerce businesses so that you can better measure the monetary impact of non-e-commerce actions on your website. So as you can see, you can pretty much track anything. I think the harder question to ask yourself is, what is it that you want people to do when they come to your website? And once you've identified that, make sure that you're tracking for it. So the goals overview report is right here. You can see that it's right below some of the sections that Vinny just talked about. Underneath content, you can see a plethora of goals reports. And on the right-hand side, you can see that the goal conversion tab is actually integrated into the majority of the reports that you see within analytics. So as you may or may not know, you can create actually up to 4 goals. If you find that you need to create 8, 12, some odd goals, then you can actually just create a duplicate profile and then create additional goals as necessary. So for every goal you create, you can also create what's called a funnel. And a funnel is essentially a series of steps that a user takes before they complete a conversion or make that final transaction. So if you've got an e-commerce business again, the funnel is typically the checkout process. So you want to figure out between when a user picks the product, puts it in their basket, enters their credit card information, figures out what shipping options apply to them, and actually make that final conversion, where are most people dropping off? And using the funnel visualization report, you can get a much better idea of where you can optimize for these types of bottlenecks. So you can fix the content that's needed and then streamline the user experience so that you can keep people on your website where they should be for as long as possible. So when you've defined your funnel, you can see this data in the funnel visualization report here. And when you create the steps for this funnel, it only applies to this particular report. And you can see for each step where people are entering and where people are leaving. So in this example, you can see that on the last page, for the View Shopping Cart page, a significant percentage of our people are leaving the shopping cart for the Google store right before they convert. And it looks like a big, or at least a fair number of them, are going to our help page. So knowing that, I might want to surface some help documentation earlier on, maybe put it on the View Shopping Cart page, so people don't have to leave to look for the answers that they are trying to find. They get what they're looking for, and then they can proceed and make that transaction. So as I mentioned earlier, you can find the Goals tab integrated into a number of reports. Let's take a look at how that looks in the AdWords campaign report. So here you can see on the left-hand side, this is where the AdWords campaign report is, hopefully very familiar to many of you. And what's highlighted here is the goal conversion tab, which is right next to the site usage tab. And you can segment goals by a variety of things. So here it's defaulted to the campaign. It's a little bit unclear, but you can also segment it by ad group, by keyword, et cetera, et cetera. So let's take a look at this example. So here you can see all of the headlines of all of the paid ads that I'm running on. So what's interesting is I segment it, I take a look at the goal conversion tab, and I can see pretty easily from this view which ads are performing well for which types of goals. So I know it's a little bit blurry, but this goal that I'm trying to assess right now is the new user activation. And so using the comparison chart tool, I can see pretty quickly which ads are performing pretty well compared to the site average, and which ones are not doing so well. So green is good, red is bad. It's pretty easy for me to figure out what's going on. So in this example, I'm looking at the ad text, I want to volunteer. And sometimes when you're creating your accounts, it's difficult to anticipate what ads work better for what types of goals if you don't have specific call to action phrases in your ad text. So in this ad text, I want to volunteer. You see that it's actually doing pretty well for this goal. I'm getting a lot of new user signups. But for the index search goal, it's not doing so well. So in this example may be pretty obvious, but this is the type of analysis that you can do and you can apply across your keywords, your campaigns, etc., to better inform your account structure so that you make sure the right ad texts are aligned with the right goals, and you can do the same for keywords, etc. So how do you create a goal? Fairly easy. You don't need any extra customization. All you have to do is go into the goal settings tab, the goal settings page actually, and I want to call attention to the goal URL that you can see here. So you just have to specify the page that you're trying to track. If you're trying to track a specific action, like earlier I talked about downloads or that type of thing, with a little bit of customization, you can also do the same thing. And then right below, this is where you can specify the funnel steps. So here I've only captured the first 4, but you can actually define up to 10 steps in a funnel. And on the right-hand side, you can name all the different steps of the funnel process. And that'll show up in your reports, so you can figure out what matches to what. So for those of you who are running non-e-commerce businesses, it's really important to specify a goal value. So for example, if you know that your sales team, on average, can close 10% of all requests that are made to your site for a phone call, and you know that an average transaction is worth about, let's say, $500, then that means that a conversion on average is probably worth about $50 to you. So I think providing some type of monetary value around these actions is important, because once you've specified this, then when you look at any of your reports, you can see, oh, okay, from this email campaign, it brought me about $200 worth of traffic, versus my banner ad, which only brought me $50. And so you can very easily and quickly see, what is all the value of all this traffic to me. So with Goals, you can actually track, traffic from everywhere, not just AdWords, obviously. And this provides a much more holistic view of the value of the users and the traffic that's flowing to your website. So you can track everything from MSN ads, Yahoo ads, other paid campaigns, organic search from all different types of search engines. You can actually add additional ones. Affiliates, referrals, basically anything you can tag to, you can probably track. In fact, let's look at this example. So this should be familiar to all of you, hopefully. That's why you're here today. But this invitation, what we did, we actually tagged the click here to RSVP link so that we could track how much traffic we were getting from this invitation on our website. So we did that using this handy tool, the URL Builder, which you can find in our Help Center, to automatically generate the URLs that we needed, to just copy and paste and put it in the links. So this is our website, where we hosted all our information about today's event. And then right below, you can see up to 5 different variables that you can include and tag in your destination URL. So there's 3 required ones, beginning with campaign source. And that essentially describes the who, like who's driving traffic to your website. So in this example, it's an email. If you're trying to tag your Yahoo paid ads and you want to import that data into analytics, then you would put Yahoo here. For the campaign medium, it's link, because that's what it is. It was a link that was provided in the email. If you're running a paid ad, you could put CPC or PPC here. And then the campaign name, pretty self-explanatory. We just called it invitation, since that's what it is. And then you just go ahead and click on the Generate URL button, and you get this beautiful URL as a result. What's highlighted in blue are all the different parameters that have been appended. You don't have to worry about it so much. Just copy and paste this into the destination URL link that you've created in your email or your banner or whatever, and then you'll be able to track data very quickly and easily this way. So if you're doing this for hundreds or several even thousand destination URLs, you might want to just export this to CSV, and then you can aggregate and automatically pop out all the URLs you need this way. So what does it look like when you actually go back into analytics? You go into the campaigns report, and you can see here, this is the invitation that we sent to all of you, and we got a very surprising number of almost 500 visits that came to our site. Very impressive, and all of you stayed on average for a full minute and 30 seconds before you guys decided you wanted to come or decided not to. So for those of you who are running e-commerce businesses, this next section is particularly applicable because of the data that analytics very easily imports on this front. So I wanted to take a few moments to walk through some of the reports and functionality provided by this as well. So the e-commerce section in analytics really isn't meant to replace your internal DB or your tracking system. I think more than anything, it's meant to provide more context around the ROI of all the different channels that are driving traffic to your website. So for example, now you can tie much more specifically products to particular keywords and to referrals so that you can optimize and target better. You can also segment by a variety of dimensions, as you probably learned from Vinny, so that you can better identify what kinds of products are the most popular and which countries are the biggest consumers of those products. And you can also see how do CPC bids vary by region based on product as well. So you can get a lot more granular data around purchase patterns. And I think this is really useful, especially when you're trying to optimize your campaigns. So this is what the e-commerce report looks like. On the left-hand side, again, it's just right below the goals section. You can see we're going in chronological order here. And on the right-hand side, you can see a top-level overview of what the e-commerce reports looks like. So you can get a glimpse of the transactions, the revenue, the commerce-related metrics, etc. So like the goal report, the e-commerce tab is integrated into the majority of all reports and analytics. And you'll see this set of metrics in most of them so that you can better quantify the value of your returning traffic versus new visitor traffic versus people from Singapore versus Malaysia, etc., etc. So I wanted to call attention to this particular metric, per visit value, because I think it's actually very useful and a very efficient metric to quickly identify opportunities So the per visit value is essentially the average value of a visit to your site. And it's calculated by looking at the total revenue divided by the total number of visits. So let's say you're an international business and you're getting a lot of great traffic from Southeast Asia. And you see though you're getting some promising traffic from Europe. But what's more telling is that per visit value from Europe is really high. Let's say France in particular. So if that's the case, that means that everyone who's coming from France, even though they're not bringing as much traffic from Southeast Asia, every time they come, they're converting and they're bringing value to your website. So if that's the case, you might want to consider creating a test campaign that's targeted to this specific region to optimize for potential traffic that you might otherwise be losing out on. So e-commerce is fairly easy to set up. I don't want to get into the mechanics of it, but when a user completes a transaction, you'll see this in the receipt code. But what I want to highlight is what you see on the right-hand side and all the different data points that are captured and populated in your reports. So you can see it's everything from the order ID, the affiliation, SKU number, product name, category. There's a lot of data in here. And you can actually segment this by all the different dimensions that we've talked about earlier to get a lot more insights. So that said, there's also a lot of reports that are available within the e-commerce section, and I wanted to take a few moments to highlight some of these and how they're useful. So firstly, let's look at the products overview report. So this report seems pretty straightforward. You get a list of all the products that people have purchased within a particular date range. What's interesting, though, about this report is you can segment it by a variety of things. So, for example, let's say you're interested in knowing for your top 5 selling products, which regions are driving that type of high-quality traffic to your site. And so you can segment it by region, by city, by country, etc., to determine where that traffic is coming from, and create ads that are targeted to those particular regions, and surface the product name and the ad text or in the keyword to make sure that you're capturing that traffic. You can also tie ad text much more specifically to product name. So earlier I showed how you can look at how different ads perform well for different goals. Well, now you can see even on a much more granular level how different ad texts are tied to specific keywords. So what types of keywords people search on and click on what kind of ad to make what kind of purchase. And you can see a much, I think, more complete picture of a user's buying cycle. So the total revenue report and the conversion reports, I think, are really useful in giving you a better sense of the quality of traffic that's coming to your site over a set period of time. So you can set this to the quality of traffic that comes across the day, across the week, across the month, however you see fit. One way to use these reports is to look at the hourly view and see what hours of the day you're receiving the most revenue and compare those with those hours of the day that you're receiving the highest converting traffic. And that's a really quick win, right? You can pretty easily figure out, okay, if most of my high revenue, high converting traffic is coming between the hours of 3 and 5, then maybe it makes sense to create a campaign that's specifically targeted to run during these hours so that I ensure I'm capturing all this high revenue generating traffic. And then lastly, the visits to purchase report and the days to purchase report, which is not shown right here. But these two reports, I think used together, offer a lot of good insight into your user's buying cycle that otherwise isn't reflected in, I think, a lot of e-commerce reports. So typically you see the end of the buying cycle, right? What people bought, where they're from, that type of thing. But you don't know what went into their thought process before they made that final transaction. So in this report, you can see pretty easily, let's say on average, users that come to your site, they usually make a purchase after 2 visits. And then let's say on average, they usually make a purchase, let's say between 2 to 3 weeks, 21 days, let's say. So if that's the case, then it might make sense to create some type of proactive, email marketing campaign to reach out to the segment of users at the 2 to 3 week mark, send them some type of discount code, free shipping, that type of thing, to make sure that you're capturing and retaining this high quality traffic that you might otherwise be missing out on. So these are just a few examples of how you might use this data. Clearly, there's a lot of different ways to slice and dice it, but I just wanted to give you guys some sense of how you might look at the reports and leverage them in useful ways. So I went through that fairly quickly, but I just wanted to highlight the importance of the e-commerce section because I think there's a lot of robust reporting offered here, and I wanted to get you guys to start thinking about it and get excited. But I know that later on, you'll see a little bit more about e-commerce reports in Idea section on optimizing for online campaigns, so you can look forward to that. And with that, I would like to hand it over to our next speaker, Adrian, who is the director of Picture